Welcome to the Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where the infinite sky meets the starry world of dramas. We're your guides through the cosmos, from heart-stopping queer love stories to straight dramas of unexpected love.
And every unforgettable moment in between that make us swoon, laugh, and cry. And, of course, we'll sprinkle in a little stardust along the way.
I'm Nixie, your drama enthusiast, ready to break down the best, and sometimes most chaotic, storylines, filming techniques in the worlds we can't stop obsessing over.
And I'm Cyrus, here to delve into characters, themes, and symbolism that invoke emotions that resonate with us in powerful and lasting ways.
Each week, we'll explore the stellar journey of love, identity, and connection, one drama and one dream at a time. Today, we orbit the series Satellite, where we discuss everything a series has to offer. Our satellite this week is orbiting I Am Nobody, Season 1 and 2.
So, gather your stardust, find your spot under the stars, and let's dive in.
Let's begin by taking a look into the stars, where we take a closer look at the synopsis that captivate us and the stars on and off screen who make every moment shine. Join us this week as we stargaze into the captivating world of I Am Nobody.
But before we can stargaze deeper, we must start by discussing the basics. I Am Nobody is a 2023 Chinese wuxia produced by Youku. This show can be watched on Youku and YouTube. It has 27 episodes with an average duration of 45 minutes each, which makes it approximately 20 hours and 15 minutes long.
Season 1 synopsis reads, Zhang Chulan, an ordinary young man, gets entangled in an unprecedented world of outsiders. When his grandfather's body mysteriously disappears, facing unexpected pursuit from Sinister Pleasure, a relentless organization, and the sudden appearance of an enigmatic girl named Fang Baobao, he decides to no longer have his superpower. As he delves into his grandfather's past, he gradually becomes part of the world of outsiders, where the mysteries of history start to unravel. The martial arts technique taught to him by his grandfather, known as Qi Hypothesis, is one of the 8 supreme skills, being sought after by many martial arts groups with ulterior motives. He then meets Wang Yi at a martial arts tournament, an outsider who mastered one of the 8 supreme skills, Gate of Gale. Wang Yi's motives were to explain to him how heavy his fate was and to stop him from inheriting the reward of the tournament. Behind it lies a shocking secret, and Fang's mysterious origins seem to hold the key to the truth. The young outsiders fight shoulder to shoulder to overcome the challenges and become friends who have each other's backs. On their journey of growth, each one searches for their sense of righteousness while a battle between good and evil looms on the horizon. Adopted from the webcomic Under One Person by Me R.
I'm Nobody. The showdown between Yin and Yang is season 2. It is a 2025 wuxia produced by Youku. The show can be watched on Youku and has 13 episodes with an average duration of 45 minutes, which makes the series approximately 9 hours and 45 minutes long.
Season 2's synopsis reads, Zhang Chulan is thrusted into the outsider's world, facing trials and tribulations that ultimately shape him into a just and responsible hero among the gifted. His fate is deeply intertwined with Fang Baobao, and their bond faces a crucial test when an unexpected crisis arises. Qin Dao, a special operative for the NDT Express, murders her superior and goes on the run. The remaining 6 elite operatives, known for their unique skills and secretive lives, come under suspicion and must collaborate to track Qin Dao down. Fang Baobao is among them. Meanwhile, clues lead to a mysterious Baiyu village, whose leader, Ma Shanhong, is closely tied to Zhang Chulan's relentless quest to uncover the truth behind the legendary 8 Supremes. Adapted from the webcomic Under One Person by Me R.
These synopses, both of them, are something else.
I do think they're actually very well written.
They are.
They're heavily, I think the first season, while it very much fits the first season, and I think both of them work fabulous synopsis in the sense of like captivating like people's attention. I think it does exactly what it's supposed to do. But I do want to note for the first season, I feel like it was heavily presented in a way that it was like kind of open-ended. Both of them were, but it was open-ended almost in the sense of that, especially if you knew that it was based on a webcomic, you would kind of have that sense that you would be aware that the webcomic, that it kind of was going to end with the possibilities of even more things to happen, to come. Unlike other synopses where usually, in most cases, with these type of dramas, it's a wrap-up. Like, there's nothing left for you to like suspect that there's going to be more in the end of the story, because it's supposed to be the end. And I kind of is what's going to happen in what is like presented in this one. Like, it's the ending part, while the beginning part represents very well what happens in the series and what, like, what you're supposed to, like, look forward to, like, finding out and go into. It ends in a way that it's almost very much like a novel webtoon kind of synopsis, where you want to know that, especially if it's still being made and it's a very long one, that there's this open, like, these group of friends are going to get together and then they're going on a little journey, but it's not going to be one journey, it's going to be several journeys and all of this kind of, like, and it's just going to be like multiple as you go down the line kind of thing.
Absolutely.
And it, to the point that it almost makes it feel like the first season is like an establishing season, and then the Qingdao era is what the season 2 is.
Yeah.
Because that's what it feels like. I feel like we shift eras into the secret operatives, or in what our versions of the English translation called them was the
part-timers,
temporary workers. Yeah,
that's it.
Was the temporary workers.
It's weird because I don't really know like what to say about the synopsis, because like they do their job.
I think they're actually pretty good synopses. I mean, I don't think they're some of the perfect ones we come across, but
Yeah.
I actually think they're pretty well written for a synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially the first seasons.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on season 2, like, they don't have to give you as much background information, because, like, if you're on season 2, the idea is that you've already watched season 1, so you kind of have an idea of what's going on, so they just kind of, like, dump you into, this is what's happening this season. Because, like, you already know the world building stuff. You know, like, where you're going to be.
Of course. I mean, some people could jump seasons, but
Please
that'd
don't
be
do
a big
that.
jump to make for this type
Please
of
don't
series.
do that. The one piece of advice I can give you for this series is watch season 1 first. Season 2 is not going to make any sense without the prior knowledge of season 1.
It absolutely will not, because at least season 1 established a lot of the world setting and what happens in the outsider world. Season 2 just throws you in it.
Yeah, immediately.
And you just better have the common knowledge to have remembered what happened from season 1.
I didn't have to worry about that.
You didn't. You watched them back to back. I had
sure
about
did.
a month or two in between season 1 and 2.
And you talked nonstop about it during that month in between the two.
Of course I did.
I'm like, I get it. It's a good series.
It's really fun.
It is very fun. It is very different than anything I've previously watched, and like, I had a good time. I need immediately a season 3. No joke. The stars that guide I Am Nobody shine brightly. Let's meet the cast and crew who make it shine. The main cast for season 1 is Pang Yuchen as Zhang Chulan, Wang Yilu as Fang Babao, Niu Hao as Wang Ye, Wayan Luorong as Shu Keqing, and Bai Wenjun as Shang Lingyu. Season 2 has the addition of Vicky Chen as Chendo, and a lot of the same returning main cast. However, Bai Wenjun's character does not make an appearance, and Shu Keqing's actor was changed to Lao Zhang. Both seasons were directed by Derek Hui. Chiang Fang was the screenwriter for both seasons, and the German Christoph Zollinger was over the visual effects for season 1. At the time of recording, my drama list does not list who was over them in season 2.
And while there were a lot more talented people who worked on the show, unfortunately we do not have the time to talk about everyone, but we would like to further highlight some of our thoughts about the cast and crew.
I think it makes a lot of sense that it was like both seasons were both written and directed by the same people, because like they absolutely feel like they go together, like they don't feel disjointed, which sometimes happens when you have changes in direction in other crew when going between seasons of things. So like, I really appreciated that these two still worked together and made the show feel seamless. It was very fun.
It was very coherent.
It was. Also, but like, talking about the cast, oh my goodness, Neo Hao. Love that man to death.
Don't we all?
I don't see how anyone could like not be just endeared by that man. He's so precious.
So happy to see that man again.
Absolutely. I do have something to confess.
This one's funny to me.
So, little background knowledge. Both me and Nixie are like really into specifically Asian pop. And like, we've been like fans of C-pop for years. However, I we watched the the first part of the season 1 kind of together. Nixie had it on in the background while, like, I was watching it, our respective places, and I was, like, texting her, like, my thoughts, and the first time Bai Wenjun showed up, I was like, "I know this man." Like, why does this
And I was
man
like, God, I hope so.
look so familiar? And as I was figuring it out, I was like, is this the guy from Sweet Tai Chi?" And she was like, "Yeah." And, like, the weird thing about this is Nixie's watched Sweet Tai Chi. I have not, but,
I
like,
love Sweet Tai Chi.
I should really
I love
watch
the
it.
martial arts shown in it. I tried getting you to watch it at one
I
point,
know,
and I
and
don't remember what
that's
happened.
why I remember Bai Wenjun in it. I just haven't fully
Who's
seen
the
it.
main lead?
But he was also in Next, a C-pop group that, like, we both were obsessed with and where I first knew him from. So it was just weird that that's where my brain, like, immediately was drawn to.
Honestly, had me concerned because when you sent me message and being like, "This man looks familiar. Who's this?" And then you're like, "Is this Bai Wenjun from Sweet Tai Chi?" And yeah, I was like, "Yeah, of course." But do you realize that he was also one of the members of Next? And you were
And
like, "Oh,
yeah,
yeah." I love Bai Wenjun. I never forget that he was one of the Next members. Like, I literally watched Sweet Tai Chi for him and then fell in love the series. I also love that plus, I loved that Ziran was also in it, and his character was hilarious. I loved his character. There's one specific scene that I think about a lot. That's when he goes by the pool and whatnot. It's supposed to be like
Oh,
I think it was
yeah.
like a gossip
Mhm.
thing or something like that. Supposedly happened, and like his couple in the series, which ironically they were engaged marriage, but like and they do actually liking each other. It's like a whole situation, but like they're also best friends. Like they had their own secret handshake that's amazing. Like it's literally their hand. They literally use both one of their hands and their. Actually, I think they use both hands and one of their feet to like do their whole handshake. It's crazy. So like they're actually really close, but their families also like had them like in marriage, and it wasn't necessarily a marriage that they had to go through with, and but they ended up do actually liking each other towards the end. But like his character was so funny. And so yeah, I was like, I thought it was hilarious that you instead of thinking of the group he came from, you thought of the series in which you have not seen.
What can I say? My brain is a wild it's kind of a weird place. I pull
Understandable.
references from the nichest of places. I did feel incredibly dumb, though, when you're like, "He was also in Next," and I was like, "That would have made a lot more sense."
It would have. It sure would have.
We've set the stage, and now it's time to delve deeper into both seasons of I Am Nobody. Spoilers ahead as we start with a drama deep dive.
Let's jump into a drama deep dive where we navigate an analysis of key scenes, character arcs, plot twist, and emotional gravity to pull us deeper into the stories we love. There's a lot that goes on in this series. Like quite
Yeah.
a lot, especially to the point that, it gains another season. To talk about both. Okay. So some of the things I thought was very interesting with the way they wrote the series and the way they the story was told was the mix between Wang Yi and his introduction, and it was kind of interesting because we get Chulan. We meet him, and like there's obviously a sign that Chunlun is like very silly but also
Mhm.
very righteous, in a certain sense. Like you kind of already take on this understanding that Chunlun is like, for the better, but also like he was taught to like his powers aren't to be used and
Mhm.
stuff like that and
Yeah.
whatnot. Like he has a certain righteousness to him about like life, even though he's very silly and a little. And he, no, honestly, the better way to describe it would be more so he didn't mind if it embarrassed him or
Mhm.
completely became ridiculed for something, so long as like what his grandfather told him not to do. Like he wouldn't
Yeah.
use it. For a good while before he used his superpowers, and so he took on a lot to keep that in until he was finally convinced to, like, you don't have to keep that hidden and you can use your powers within, of course, restraints, because he's learned a lot of self-restraint. You can tell growing up. In fact, you literally see that in his childhood. But it's an interesting introduction for him. And then you have Wang Yi, who's literally pulled into the Phantom Realm and, like, literally, what do they call
So
it? They call
casually.
it yes, he's ripped into it and ends up being pulled on a train.
Samagoria?
It was
Phantasmagoria?
something like that. It was
something.
It was an interesting word I could never pronounce. My brain just kind of like skimmed over it. I just knew what it was when I saw it and what was happening. That was literally just how my brain perceived his abilities and in that world that they, that specific power. And I think they were technically called wizards. So, like, he fell under, I think a mage is essentially what they fell under, which is a wizard in English terms, or Maggie, I think, in other culture terms. And because, like, there was different classes essentially, and him and Zhang had, like, under the same class, which was essentially supposed to be kind of like, because you have ones that were like Taoist, which was like martial arts, and then you had one that was based on like magic elements. And technically he was an interesting character because Wang Yi is honestly fundamentally supposed to be martial artist. He's supposed to be full on force, but we learn in the tournament the eighth supreme that he learned is technically a sorcery, essentially a magic element. But his introduction is very fascinating because he gets ripped in, and what it does for the story is so intriguing because he gets pulled into this phantom world, and all of the sudden, everything we thought we knew about Chulan is thrown out of the way because Chulan turns around and he's covered in blood head to toe. Comes around head to toes. And when he's kind of like, okay, what is going on here? Who is this?
He's
and why?
No clue who this is.
And he's just trying to run everything through his head, like, what's going on? And he's so confused. And so that's such an interesting way to bring that up. Like, to throw us into that, in that form, masterpiece. Because, like, instead of being like, okay, like, it did to a certain extent give you a world building that the 8 Supreme situation that happened in, like, what they called the Jingshan year or whatever, it was the Jingshan incident. And so, like, we were established that there was a year and there was a whole thing that went down that, like, was very bad, whatnot. But to reintroduce it using the train and, like, something with Chulan, and which it was a very unique way to do it. And I don't know why. I love how they did that. And then what I love more, and I know this kind of goes into our character section in the next one, but not quite, is how Wang Yi, even having seen Chulan in this phantom world, covered in blood, what makes him appear to be a murderer, and to a certain extent, because it kind of it doesn't establish that he was the murderer, but it does make him look that way. Absolutely. To the point that even the second time he gets pulled into that is the first time I think Chulan fully, like, turns around and, like, faces Wang Yi, and he's like, Wang Yi, and Wang Yi's like, you know me? Like, how do you know my name? And he's like, I'm gonna need you to prevent this from happening and don't let me learn about things, which he still lets him learn about the things, but it doesn't play out the same way, I think, because with Wang Yi's help, and honestly with Zhe Qing's help, allowed a lot of the fate to shift from how heavily it was going to end up. But it was also very cool on Wang Yi's part that he meets someone who he's been seeing in these phantoms, which I'm going to presume the other reason why he was so calm about is, one, his mindset, as is how his kind of gave him that ability, but two, they do present that the phantom world isn't exactly all knowing. Like, it's a phantom world. Like, it's literally not really existing, but at the same time, everything. Like, it's literally like the ability of premonition.
Premonition.
Yeah. The outcome of premonition. So it's like the ability to see things, but like in that idea of being able to see things, there's not necessarily. Actually, the Phantom War, I take that back. The Phantom War is more so a representation of past, present, future. And while the past is set in stone at this point in time of the Phantom, wherever you're at, the present and the future are still unknown entirely. So there's still things, because that's why they were able to enter, like, themselves, like that one scene later on in the series where the 3 of them go under, and they ask questions they need, and then Chulan almost kills all of them because he asks because like the deeper the question is and the more danger it is to bring it up into the surface and reveal the question, the more of your life is on the line. And so when they did that, it was just it was crazy. So it put them in a lot of stress and situations. But again, it was fascinating because when Wang Yi met Chulan at the tournament, he was actually pretty chill.
Oh, yeah.
He was very laxed. He was like, it's just another dude that may or may not end up with a very bad fate. I also wouldn't be surprised if that phantom that he saw was less so of a permission of what was going to happen, but just a representation and symbolism of how heavy the fate was.
Yeah.
Of learning the truth. Because now that I'm speaking it and talking about it, maybe that's why I felt like I was kind of like confused to why we never really got anything remotely close to that, what had happened at the very beginning. Because, I mean, yes, they end up on the train and they end up finding that Bao is the girl in the coffin, and they find out like all of this. But like the people who are, that's all murdered on the ground, there's nothing about that that's really explained. I mean, I think the train was a symbolism of thought of some sort of a passage of something, of some sort of the mind, I want to say. Because the place in which they revived Bao Bao was a place they said that they only stumbled across once and where they gained the Supremes to begin with. But they tried to go back. It was very hard to find this place. And so there must be something about the place that's very subconscious, very like far away. So, and that's where the tragedy came. But there were still some things left open about that. And that could be because the story shifts from the Jingchen tragedy and like what really happened to what happened with Bao Bao. Like it kind of shifts heavier on her.
Yeah.
On how she died and how she gets brought back to life. And so that could be, and it's not even a complete series in the sense that there's still things being brought up about Chinlan's past and like his grandfather's past all the way to season 2 to the point that maybe that's why I'm still in my head trying to figure out what actually happened in the Jingchen tragedy, the disaster. Because now that I think about it, I don't remember the full details that made it the tragedy.
It definitely even at the end of it, like we get like these little like kind of like progress tracker type things throughout the series, and like one of them was like percentage of like of the truth found at the Jensen Dynasty, and we never reached like the complete like 100%. I think they had
which made it even harder. And which even made it harder when Bao Bao didn't get her memories back. In fact, they completely shattered.
In fact, she loses them.
Maybe that's why we never reached 100. Maybe that's why we never reached it, because she might have had some key memories that they needed that we never achieved. And on top of that, all the way till season 2, there's still a scene where Wang Yu confronts Chunlin and he's like, was this the question you asked in the Phantom World? Kind of points out to Chunlin how grave that question was. And like it brings up something that happened back in season 1, which makes me think that's why, like I said, we never fully get the whole story behind what happened. Instead, we shift to Bao Bao. So because of that, it feels like a plot hope, but that's only because it's left open. And this is literally an ongoing series. I don't know if they'll do a season 3 because it depends on the popularity of this season and how it goes in order for it to keep going. But the webcomic, on the other hand, is still going. And so it leaves it open to find out what happens. You know, we talked a lot about season 1.
Yeah.
Season 2 story plots. Honestly, I think Qindao's twist and stuff was truly the most fascinating part about the series.
Yeah.
About her arc. Especially considering you go in thinking Qindao is actually a murderer. Newsflash, she's not. I mean, she did.
She did murder the guy.
She did. But I think what's interesting is that there's more to her side of the story that is given to us.
Yeah.
And some of it I want to go into, but I'd rather go into it in her character in the character part or section. But in terms of story plot for her, I actually like how they kind of give her off as a potential villain, which honestly, watching it, I actually didn't see her as a villain. Honestly, almost hoped that maybe she didn't actually end up killing him. And so because of how they gave her off, it was almost presented that maybe they had done something that killed him, and then only to later find out it really was her. So I think there's an interesting playback. There's a little game that goes back and forth in what actually happens, or how one mistake by Qingdao threw all of the temporary workers under suspicion.
Yeah.
Which endangered Bao Bao.
Yes.
And what's fascinating about that is parallel by story building. Is I love the parallels between Qingdao and Bao Bao.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love the parallels with how Zhang Chulan and Bao Bao are parallels to Lao Zhang and Qingdao. Because of how Bao Bao could mess up and the company would get rid of her just like Qingdao.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because the parallel between Lao Zhang and Zhang Chulan is that both wanted to protect the other person. Both want to protect... One wants to protect Bao Bao, one protects Qingdao. The difference is their outcome and what happened to them. Because Zhang Chulan, while yes, he could mess up and end up almost in the same position as Lao Zhang. But Lao Zhang is the negative outcome here in this parallel. So he does fall under, unfortunately, this sense where he ends up dying in the end, in which his choices, while intended to help Qingdao, because of how different the mindsets of Qingdao and Lao Zhang are, it ended up being more harm than good for her. And that was the unfortunate twist that broke him, and now is the negative parallel, so far negative, to Zhang Chulan and Bao Bao's situation with if the company found out that Bao Bao, who she is, how old she actually is, then she's in a lot of trouble. Especially who she is, because she's Sinister Pleasure's original, the leader's daughter. She's no telling how old. And so she's got to be almost 100 or something years old. But, which is a really cool parallel to present in this story.
I agree.
I got one. Speaking scenes, one of my favorite things about season 1, and I know we talk more about season 1, but then again, there was more in season 1. It was literally, 27 episodes? 27
to 13.
Well, the other one was only 13 episodes. So there's a huge difference in how many episodes each one had. So I have a lot more to say in season 1. And that is, I forget that I love this vibe, and that is, I loved season 1 for its tournament setting.
Yes.
Something about it was so nice. And I think part of that was because, ironically, heavily inspired by anime or in a lot of the action styles that it comes from. And this isn't me just saying it because of something I observed. It's actually been commented on reviews and on the actual descriptions for the webcomic itself, and where it was things, ideas, inspiration was taken from. And so it was naturally shot to be this almost anime-esque live action, and something about the tournament reminded me heavily of I think this happened more than once, and it's been years, we're talking 7, 8, maybe almost 10 years now since I've seen them, and it reminded me heavily of scenes from Fairy Tail the anime. And there were a lot of tournament scenes in that series occasionally. It heavily reminded me of that series, and I so enjoyed seeing that in this series. I was literally going episode to episode, so excited to see what they would come up with for the battles and stuff like that, which ended up being absolutely hilarious to watch Shenlong cun his way and outsmart most of his opponents out of fighting. Sometimes fighting each other, getting tired, and him just cheating his way through it. And even having Bao Bao help him cheat his way through it was absolutely hilarious.
Very men like turnips.
She did. And it was funny because she tried to do it more than once.
Yeah.
She did it twice. Both times she got both of them into the ground, but the first time the guy ended up battling Shenlong before the actual tournament and ended up just surrendering and was just you know what, I'll admit I wouldn't have beat you in the tournament anyways, so I'm not going to show up. Didn't show up. The second time he tried to do it was all night. all night, Wang Yi was running around trying to get away from her to the point that he runs into the arena with her chasing him. And everyone notices it. And without a single drop of shame, she's like, oh, my bad. And then just leaves. Like, obviously she was cheating. And Wang Yi, which they didn't even end up having a battle in that arena because it was literally them eating food. And Wang Yu asks little questions where he's like, is this what you really want to choose? And Chulan just eats the buns. Like, no, eats all of them. And he literally kicks him. And he's like, why would you choose that? That is the worst option out of everything you could have chose. And then just walks away. And everyone's like, what just happened?
Because, like, no one knows what went down on that in the arena, minus Sugar Ching, who loves gossip, uses his enhanced hearing for nefarious reasons.
He did that multiple times. I will say my favorite battle in the arena was between Wang Yi and
I agree.
Zhuge Qing.
That was very. I really liked that one.
Actually, I mean, it was my favorite. No competition. But I will say, the second runner-up for me was the fight or the battle between Zhang Chulan and Ling Yu, because I like how both fights, one of my favorite thing about both of those fights that ended up being top favorites with, again, no competition, Wang Yi's and Zhuge Qing's. But I like how both of them actually had a really cool parallel sense to them.
Absolutely.
And that's what made them so memorable. Mm-hmm. And that, like, for example, both of them were actually the same powers. Because, like, you don't see it often. In most battles, the strengths are different. And the strengths were different. But they were the same powers pinned up against each other in a complete different opposite self. Like, the Qi hypothesis one where both of them had the same ability. The difference being one was still innocent and the other one wasn't, which honestly was also a really cool breakthrough because Ling Yu's character actually had to go through acceptance to even come close to beating Chulan, which later find out that he could have. But his master, like, gave him, like, something in his drink to, like, keep him from being able to use his full strength, which was wild.
Being drugged by the man who has raised you, trained you, so, like, you wouldn't beat this other guy who he's just met, but he was best friends with his grandfather, so he's like, I gotta protect him. Like, that's wild.
He also had a very calm reaction to learning that.
I was like, boy, fight for yourself. Do something. Don't just take that.
But I will admit, I do love his acceptance of himself.
Yes,
that was
I
an
agree.
Interesting way. And so his chi goes literally to almost this black mud-like thing, so it comes very different. And so that battle was interesting for that reason, while the other one was interesting because they both had the ability, so Gate of Gale, but I don't remember what the other one's name was called. It was slightly different, but they were similar in the sense that they both could call forth like this almost
premonition,
like this type
grid.
Premonition. It's like a table of some sort, like a star chart almost like style. But what it does is like you move the characters around and you end up in a different part. And so the difference was, and I don't remember too deeply because it's been a while. And honestly, if you want to know more about it, there's literally a scene where Zhuge Qing ends up getting so obsessed with the fact that he was upset that he lost to Wang Yi, but with someone with almost the same powers. For starters, he wasn't expecting to lose, and you could tell he wasn't expecting to lose, especially to the fact that he didn't know Wang Yi had the ability and had one of the 8 supremes, such as the Gate of Gale, to even go up against. And so he was upset that he was able to go against him to begin with, but he was confused because he was like, our powers are essentially the same thing. The biggest difference just being that you're a supreme and I'm not. Yeah. And so he's like, I want to know what your power is and how do you, and like explain it to me. Like you can tell this man was full on fascinating and you understand why there's a whole bromance between these two, like so heavily riddled in this.
It's so good.
I don't care if Zhuge Qing has a romance interest in season 2. No. 100% him down for the bromance, because tell me why in season 2 when Wang Yi comes up on Zhao Qing after he was talking with his supposed love interest, looks like starts beating the crap out of him. He looks almost like a wife catching kissing her husband cheating. That was what it felt like to me. I was like, the vibes gave that completely, and I was here for it. It wasn't, but it was funny. But backing out of the bromance side, back to what I was saying, it was so fascinating because he was so intrigued into knowing what the power was and the difference was. But there is an actual scene, like I was saying, where Wang Yi explains his powers. And honestly, it's beautifully explained. It's just been a while for me, and I'm so sorry. Like, it's been a few months, so I don't remember how he explained it, but highly recommend. That's one of my favorite scenes because it was so cool to him explaining how his power works. Having explored Drama Deep Dive, let's shine a light on character constellation where new stars await.
By mapping out character constellations, we chart the growth of our favorite characters, exploring how they shine brighter over time, evolve, and form unique constellations with the characters around them. There's so many good characters.
Yes, I was just going to say, there's so many characters we can deep dive in on this, and I know we can't do all of them, but I'm going to do as many as I can. And let's just start with the main lead himself, Chulan. It's such an interesting way he's introduced. On top of that, he's a character that is like very silly. He's presented to like be very chaotic, kind of dumb, but in reality,
He's
high
not
EQ,
dumb.
high EQ and high IQ max.
Yeah.
He knows how to float around both in social situations and intellectual situations. And I feel like that's so overlooked, but also highly looked into. Like, it's because there's characters that underestimate him, and there's characters that underestimate him. So like, because like there's been several that have realized how intelligent he actually is. He's able to, as much as he can, because it is a story, there's going to be flaws in his thought process and like how he tries to handle things, because that's the whole point of lessons. But for him to, and just in general, in like season 2, to come up with the idea of, I'm going to play the bad guy, so that all of you will unite to help Bao Bao, because if I can make you feel this way about Chindo, then you're going to feel this way that if the worst come to worst about Bao Bao, because she's one of you. And so he was like, I'm going to play the bad guy, because if I play the negative aspect, you're going to like, what's wrong with you? Why would you treat her that way? She's just like any one of us. Why would you do that to her?
Yeah.
Then it's going to give you the empathy you need to also build that same exact bond for Bao Bao. And that's an intelligent,
that's so smart,
both like EQ, IQ way to completely manipulate your way into hoping and praying for this outcome for Bao Bao. Like I said, I love that type of character. Like, he knows how to play both fields. He also knows how to go through shame, as well as, while at the same time maintaining respect for himself. Like, sure, he'll snoop down to certain levels. Not bad, but like more like tricks than anything. He'll snoop down to levels doing things, but he'll also snoop down to level in terms of integrity and dignity, but without losing that, because he's like, I'll go this far if it helps me with what I need. But in the end, I hope you know that I know who I am, what I am. Like, I respect myself. So like, that's what I love about his character. And like, he learns a lot in both seasons. Absolutely. And he grows even more, which is why I think in season 2, I feel like he actually has higher EQ, IQ, and sides of his intelligence grows a lot in season 2, more so than in season 1. Because season 1, yes, it was there, absolutely, but I feel like it didn't grow as strong as it did until season 2. And I don't know, I just love his character growth.
One of my favorite things about Chulan is the way, again, he like sticks to himself in like his integrity, even like through the tournament of outsiders, when, because like he goes in and people have already it's already like kind of like spread that like he has like the key hypothesis, and like so people are like really kind of like on the edge of their seats like, as he comes in, and like he's like weeks away from finding out this entire world exists, so he has nothing. Like, he goes in and everyone immediately, like, because he does kind of like use his little tricks to kind of work his way through Bao Bao and his own little schemes.
He even, to some extent, not fully, but he almost creates a way to make people believe what Chi hypothesis was
Mm-hmm.
in one of the battles before he ended up actually having to use it.
Yeah.
To a certain extent that I'm still not sure till the end of even all the way to end of season 2 that we ourselves have fully
Yeah.
seen the extent
Mm-hmm.
of Chi hypothesis, because I truly don't believe that even with the battle of Ling Yu, even though he went all out, I honestly would not be surprised if there was more to Chi hypothesis that has not been revealed to us.
His ability to like endear those around him just by being himself, mostly outside the battles, because it gets to the point where everyone like has to kind of like come to the conclusion that like he's like smart and he knows what he's doing, but is also to an extent like while like yes they call him shameless, like it's not that he's shameless, it's the what he's like so like focused on like what he's trying to accomplish for the sake of Bao Bao, even though they don't know that. But it's so endearing to a sense, and I love him. I think he's very intriguing.
Moving on from him to the other main focus kind of lead is Bao Bao's
Bao
character.
Bao, I love Bao Bao.
Bao Bao's a stick of wood, and it makes absolute sense. Like, you cannot tell me if you met Bao Bao and saw her personality, you wouldn't be like, there's nothing going on up there. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, she had her memory wiped twice.
Yes, I was just going to say, which ironically makes perfect sense for her personality. Like, it makes sense the way she is the way she is. And to a certain degree, I love her for that. And I know this sounds bad, but I actually liked the idea of season 1's ending where she loses her memory. No, like, I don't like that she
I
lost her
was
memory.
so mad.
It's unfortunate. It's sad. And I know you were mad.
I
You
was
were
so
practically
mad.
yelling at me through text messages.
I was.
I was like, honestly, I liked the ending because I loved the lesson of that you don't need to know the past. You just need to be there in the moment. And so whatever happens, like, you don't need to know back then. Like, yes, do they still keep digging it up? Sort of, yeah. But I don't know, I like that lesson that you can start over kind of sense. You don't need to have every baggage or every like trauma that happened in your past to keep moving forward.
When you put it like that, it's you did it before and you've done it now again. Like it makes sense, but that doesn't diminish the anger I feel. You can have your little smart conclusions, this grand thesis about it. It still makes me mad.
No, I get it. I get it. I like Bao Bao's character.
I do too.
The way she was presented to us and the way she just goes through everything is
Yeah.
her thought process is very different from a normal human standpoint. And I think a lot of that does have to do with her experiences and having lost her memory twice.
I don't think I could like properly like vocalize just how much I love this girl. Like it's intrinsic. It's intrinsic. It's like she's so precious. The relationship between her and Chenlan is one of my favorite things maybe ever.
But moving on for her, I think we've kind of already dived a little into Wang Yi's personality. I don't know, do we have more to say? Because I feel like we went a lot into his, just not deeply, but we went into it for sure.
My only thing I want to say about Wang Yi is genuinely
Love this man.
A, yes. B, I think he may be the coolest person to live ever. He's
Yes, he's
so
so
freaking
fucking chill.
cool.
He's also almost always sleeping,
Oh, absolutely.
which is hilarious because there's a scene when he shows up at the tournament and they're like, he looks like he's been preparing for days, and they're like, oh, or they like hasn't slept for days,
I'm
and
like,
it's just
that's
like,
all
no,
he's been doing.
he's been sleeping for days is how you should word that.
And like even at the to the point A where Shigaching at one point takes a selfie of himself with Wang Yi sleeping in the background. Love that.
Who wasn't fully sleeping because I'm pretty sure his version of sleeping is like very light. So like I think he opened his eyes at some point to watch him taking the picture and everything.
But like was too tired and like didn't care enough to to call him out on him. I'm like, that's husband behavior.
Absolutely.
This is like their first time like kind of meeting, but we don't talk about that.
Close enough.
Season 2, where like Wang Yi's like, my part of this is done. I'm gonna go down the mountain and sleep for 2 days. And I'm like, that's exactly what you're gonna do. I have no doubt about that.
No, wouldn't doubt a single thing he says if it involves sleep.
Absolutely not.
And so I love his character. There's so much I could say about it. But like I said, I feel like it was already said in like essentially talking about some of his scenes that were brought up previously anyways. So I don't think it's necessary to really deep dive too much into his character in this one.
Like once we start, like we won't be able to stop. So it's better just to move on.
It really is. But moving on to him, let's go on to his husband. That's a joke. I'm so sorry. But Ching.
Ching.
I love him because he is an interesting form of greed, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
He's truly well collected of a character. He's kind of like Wang Yi, but the difference is they're kind of parallels to each other because there's definitely some rooted greed. Zhuge Qing that isn't as necessary for Wang Yi because Wang Yi's so relaxed and carefree.
Yeah.
Honestly, he probably doesn't even care that he even has one of the 8 Supremes.
Yeah.
While Zhuge Qing, on the other hand, he's not necessarily like, I want to seek all power and not even to the point that he's like, I don't know what's right or wrong. Like he obviously knows right or wrong, but he has like this knowledge, like he just wants to keep consuming information about especially his family's powers. So like the abilities that he has, and which dives him into like, we get more about him in season 2 and like he ends up doing the right thing, of course, but it's still intriguing because you still know that he still has this strong underlining presence that is a form that makes him like any character that is the flaw of a very human personality with things such as greed and power, while somehow maintaining a really good balance of it that keeps him from being corrupted.
Yeah.
And love that about him.
I agree. Like the first Chulan and like the NDT people like meet him like at the airport before they even have like meet at the competition. And it's just this wild group of people, like a fan mob essentially.
Yeah.
People with blue-haired streaks, like they get kind of caught in the crowd, and he's just like, "Oh, like what do you want me to sign to Chinlan?" And he's like, "I have no idea who you are."
And then he was shocked by it. He's like, you don't know who I am? Like, I don't know why I love that about his personality.
Weird kind of like thing in season 2. It's brought up like when he's like with like his like little love interest. Ugh, whatever.
I like personality wise
her.
his love interest. She's really sweet. I love her. She's a badass. It's just my Delulu side is like, whatever.
Like at one point he's like, "I voiced the car. Are you impressed?" And I'm like, what? Like that's a wild thing to just up and say.
He's a wild character sometimes, but we
But we love him.
So then moving on from him, Qingdao. I love her character because, like I said before, she's kind of like a parallel to Bao Bao. But what I love even more is that they present her, like they try to humanize her. She is human. I want to clarify. Yeah. Clearly, she's a kid that was human. But the problem is the way she was raised dehumanized her completely. And so her mindset is not the same of a normal human being. And I loved that representation for her. And I loved that throughout the entire time of trying to figure out her past, they kept, that's like one of the things that, because that's what Lao Zhang had wrong.
Yeah.
And where he went wrong is that he was like, she wants to be like everyone else. She wants this. And yeah, to a certain degree, she probably did, but she doesn't even know what she wants. She doesn't have that mindset. To a certain degree, she doesn't know what to want. Yeah. Like, in her mindset, she just, and to the point that I even believe that I think almost anyone that came across her had the wrong mindset for her, because she was practically, she's kind of like Bao Bao. You could tell her anything, she would believe it wholeheartedly. Like Bao Bao's the same way, but like that's because of their mindset is just drastically different.
I think the closest person who ever, like the person who got the closest to ever like truly like understanding her was the kind of bunny boy in the bunker.
But I was gonna say, even to the point that I don't think Ma Shanhong even understood her.
Mm-mm.
Like he was trying to claim that she just wants freedom. She just wants to be a regular person, which kind of the same idea as Lao Zhang. Just the problem is Lao Zhang didn't. He went about it wrong, and I think his mindset for her is he just didn't understand what she wanted.
Yeah.
And Masha, but what they think she wanted is deeply rooted in someone with a construct of humanity
Yeah.
and what it's like to want to have something. And you would think, yeah, wouldn't Qingdao have gained that aspect going through, like, for example, making friends in the bunker and all of these different things that she went through and things that she was forced on her to like come to realize how different she was. For starters, that's an insane thing to bring up to someone and break to them that they are absolutely different from everyone around them.
The way that they were like, oh, like her childhood was spent in this like dark cave, like trying to completely remove themselves from themselves. Let's take her out of the bunker, take her to a park nearby, and let her just watch as kids just be able to run around and be free and like have a childhood. And just like because like the when it comes to a head and like she has like this basketball and she is like trying to emulate what is going on around her, and she's just breaking down as like she bounces it and like tries to chase it, as like trying to like chase this thing that she knows that she could never have. Like that broke me.
It did too. I was so sad. I was actually at work when I watched that, and I was like, I can't cry, which I don't cry with shows, but I was like I came close too, because I was like, stop, that's so sad. But that's an insane way to try to break to someone, hey, you're not normal. Which for starters, whose right is it to tell someone you're not normal? Like there's multiple ways. Honestly, I don't think you had to break it to her that she wasn't normal.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you eventually did need to bring back her emotions, but you didn't have to provoke it that way. You didn't have to express she was different. You could have completely just somehow manipulated in a way that you could have shown her other people without showing her she was different. Like, if that makes sense. And yes, I do think in the end they were all right in the sense of what she wanted, because she spent an entire day up to her death because she held in all her poison to be normal. Like that was the whole point of her death and ending. But even then, it still didn't express that the whole thing is so hard to learn about her is that her mindset is not the normal level. And honestly, that's the whole point.
What she wanted out of normalcy was different from what everyone else expected her to be, like to become as like their version of normal. Because like what they truly wanted was to be able to kind of get her to a point where they could use her in the way that they wanted. That's not what she wanted. And like that, it's Qingdao is genuinely like one of like the saddest characters I think in the franchise so far. It's heart-wrenching.
She's a very deeply symbolic character. Period.
One last little thing, we don't have to talk about it much. I just want to mention, love my blondie.
Yes.
Loved
I don't think I
him.
have enough to deep dive into his character specifically, but
love him.
Love him.
Love Chu.
I love how we're just calling him Blondie.
I know his name. It's Chu. QIU. He's forever just my blondie. I love him.
His full-on costume, like his full-on when he goes all out, was great. It's so silly, but it's so him.
Oh, it's so good.
As someone who's a part of Sinister Pleasure to a certain degree, it very much fits him.
Very fitting. We've journeyed through drama deep dive and character constellations, but now let's explore the cosmos of creation for one last perspective.
Journey with us through the vast expanse of world building. In the cosmos of creation, we explore how creators craft intricate universes that not only enhance stories, but bring them to life in ways we can't forget.
In season 1 specifically, there are several kind of info dumpy sections, but like if you're introducing like a completely new world or world of ideas even, you kind of have to at some point. Like it can't all be just kind of like woven in. Like sometimes it's necessary to like this is what's happening, let's move on. I was like I think the show like kind of like weaves them in at times, like, where it doesn't feel it, like, doesn't, like, bring you completely out of it, which is nice. But I will say, having the Outlander tournament in season 1 to kind of showcase that and, like, display all of, like, the types of powers of, like, not only, like, our main, like, cast, but of, like, just kind of, like, these are, like, other powers that, like, kind of exist in this world to kind of, like, build up, like, the realism of it was very smart.
To the point that they talk about categories and even go so deep that they bring up powers that do exist in outside of the I am nobody universe, like telekinesis. But they also talk about how there's telekinesis, but there's also like object telekinesis, which is like, for example, I forgot their name. There's two people, like, for example, it's actually kind of like how Ting and Wang Yi have like the same power,
Mhm.
just kind of different. But better, more common example in terms of something that people can relate to if they don't understand the other powers, because they're a little bit more intricate. Comes down to, like, there's one character that's semi introduced to us very briefly, and it's the one where Chunlin gets tries to get recruited into a different company, essentially.
Yeah.
And this guy was also trying to be recruited, and we learn his powers is like telekinesis, but it's like object specific telekinesis. It's where the owner or the person who has the ability to move objects can only move objects in which they have built almost like a bond kind of sense to, and like it, and has strengthened it over time. So it's the same object every time. Like, they can't manipulate anything beyond that. Versus one of the NDT, one of the characters, Shusan, who has telekinesis, and his limitations is that he can move things, but one, he can only move one thing, and two, is a strength for sure. Like, the bigger the object, maybe a shorter time he can do it for because it takes a lot out of him. Regardless, it's essentially the same thing, but different aspect of how that same thing works among two different people. And that's something that, like I said, was very nicely showcased, especially with the tournament, regardless if those two examples didn't exist in the tournament. But there was a bunch more of others.
Something in season 2 that's brought up that I was like, I think it was actually a question that I had in season 1 about, like, how, like, many outsiders are there? And, like,
Mm-hmm.
in, like, it was in season 2, it's brought up of, like, the population gap, and I'm like, as someone who, like, is, like, very
Loves
interested
data.
in, like, I love data, but, like, having them talk about the fact that there was, like, studies done about, like, how many outsiders that, like, could exist without causing, like, regular people strife, you know? And, like, how, like, they're, like, talking about how, like, they're almost there because of probably closer than what they think because of, Moshe Hong's kind of
Uh-huh.
turning, like, regular people into outsiders, or trying to, at least. I love that. That's kind of stuff I love.
There's a very interesting world building in play for this series.
I feel like we could get so much more in depth if, like, a season 3 gets made, because, like,
Mm-hmm. We would have more to add to it if there's ever a season 3 made. As we prepare to leave the stars behind, let's gather the stardust of our experience and share our final reflections on I Am Nobody.
this is such a unique show. Both seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Highly recommend it.
It's very different.
Yes.
In a sense, if it's kind of like, I think it is a modern Wuxia,
Mhm.
and so I would, if you were a fan of those, highly recommend it because it's a very cool take. Even more so that if you also like anime, weirdly enough, I think this would be a really cool like live action version of that, and it really plays into that very nostalgic like vibe of anime,
Mhm.
and I love that about it. I think the only reason I don't have much to say in this final wrap up has to come down to the fact that I feel like I said a lot in the other sections,
Mhm.
but ironically, not in the sense of like how we have a bad habit of being bad at waiting until the last minute to, like, we end up accidentally saying what we want to say at the
Yeah.
end towards the other sections. And it wasn't in that sense, more so that it was like I got everything I wanted to say properly in every section.
Mhm.
That I'm kind of like, I don't know how to wrap it up, because I'm like, I've said everything I wanted to say about the plots, about the characters, about the world building, and it's like, to just put it all together, it's just like, it's a really good show, and I'm like, the
Yeah.
vibe of it is, it's very something different.
Mhm.
If you're coming from Shanxias or Wuxias, like the traditional ones, I would say it's going to be very different, because like I said, the cinematic style, the script style, more heavier on comedy, and even that's both with the acting and even the way it's shot
Mhm.
is drastically different. You're not going to get the same vibes as you get for other series, and I'd even say, dare I say, it's different than even Chinese modern show dramas,
Oh, absolutely.
because of its heavy inspiration,
Mhm.
and but because of that, it's so unique, more.
I am not the greatest person to, like, kind of, like, put this forth, but completely feel like this series is, like, underrated. I haven't seen many people talk about it. Very good show, all in all. Both seasons, top tier. I think I've rated both of them 4.9 out of 5.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Stars Align Dramas and Dreams podcast, where we meet amongst the stars that illuminate the love stories that light up our universe and connect us all.
If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and share your stardust and thoughts with us. We'd love to hear your comments, favorite moments, or suggestions for what we should explore next.
You can connect with us in the comments or through our socials, as well as our email that are linked in the description. Let's keep the conversation going under the stars.
Until next time, keep dreaming, keep listening, and remember, love always shines brightest in the cosmos.
Bye.
Bye.